Imagine Paris 5,000 years ago. A hill, a swamp, and a river. In these wild lands, a lord of the woods roamed unchallenged, feared by all the animals of the forest. Then one day, humans arrived. They built defenses against the wolves. They got rid of nature. Millions of men and women have come here from all over the world. They have built a vast city around them. They travel underground and sleep up high. They go about the city in search of love and adventure. But do they realize that all around them, other creatures are also trying to live their lives? Now nature is getting her own back. She's returning to Paris. 3,000 wild species live unsuspected adventures. They seek love and a place to stay. They manage to raise their young in our midst. Some wait till we're asleep before they live the high life. There are even those that come to hunt. How have they managed to return? How do they live alongside humans today? So close to us and yet unseen. You're about to embark on a very special journey on the wild side of the City of Light, Paris. Our story begins with a rather special family. They appear to be a regular family of grey geese. Good old European geese. It's autumn. The parents are leading their 5 young ones to a warm place in the south. As they do every year, they have planned to stop over in Paris. Nothing unusual so far. But who's this? With a little white head and a black bar on her eyes. A bar-headed goose. She's not from here. This goose is usually found in China. So why is she traveling with this European family? They left Sweden 2 days ago and have been flying almost non-stop. Everyone's exhausted. And they need food and a good rest. That's good timing. Not long till they reach Paris. To get their bearings, they use the landmarks they know. The Château de Versailles, for example. They know the city is only 10 minutes flight from here. After the chateau, they just have to follow the motorway, and then the Seine. Everyone knows that. The big city. But Paris hasn't always been so attractive to animals. When the first people came here, it was nothing but a swamp. The Gaulish tribe of the Parisians settled here and lived in the mud. The Latin lutum, or mud, gave the city its first name, Lutetia. Their first task, keep the wild animals out. So they cleared, they drained, they built dikes, they piled up mounds of stone and cement. No more trees, no more plants. For many centuries, there were no natural spaces in Paris. For animals, the city became uninhabitable. That is no longer the case today. Quite the opposite. The city has become a paradise for those willing to give it a go. First stop for our family of travelers is the most renowned gourmet restaurant in the capital, the racecourse at Longchamp. Coming to dine at Longchamp is a real family tradition. Beginning our descent. Final approach. Prepare for landing. And now the feast. You can tell this grass is cared for, fertilized, watered, and cut to perfection. Few restaurants serve such delicious food. With millions of blades of grass to choose from, your neighbor's one is clearly the most appealing. Little Bar is probably a fugitive. Bar-headed geese are imported from Asia and sold as ornamental birds to decorate parks. She was born in captivity. One day she saw this family of wild geese flying overhead, so she took off with them. They forgot one thing. This restaurant gets very busy on a Sunday. To find a lodging for the night. They head to the Bois de Boulogne. St. James's Pond is a stone's throw from Port-Maillot. It's a first-class establishment. Beautiful quarters where many Parisians come to partake in their odd pastimes. No worries, they're harmless. Little Bar begins by sampling the water. Good news, it's safe to drink. Clearly, our geese aren't the only ones that know about this place. Another family of travelers, Canadians. Strange. A polite greeting. It's a shared space. The premises on offer is a little island in the middle of the pond. First of all, a good nap. And on one foot, please. This keeps the other nice and warm. We could imagine Little Bar's story continues like this. But life always throws surprises in the way. There, on the other bank, another bar-headed goose. Since leaving her parents, she has never seen another like her. The first moments of a bird's life are imprinted on their memory for their entire lives. The bar-headed goose's natural habitat is in China and India. Every year they cross the Himalayas at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Capable of flying almost without oxygen, they are, along with demoiselle cranes, the highest flying birds in the world. What mysterious attraction draws these two lost geese together? People do have some curious pastimes. One of these brought about the return of trees and plants into this city of stone and cement. In the 16th century, a new fashion arrived from Italy, strolling, or should we say promenade, an activity that consists of walking up and down with no destination in mind. To brighten up her walks, Queen Catherine de' Medici demanded an Italian-style garden next to her palace at the Louvre. Some plants, a little water, and a few statues. A miracle. For the first time, nature returned to the center of town. But this garden was reserved for the nobility. A century later, the bourgeois also caught onto this fashion. They too needed gardens for their promenades. Never mind, they planted trees in the Place de la Concorde and on the Champs-Élysées. The bourgeoisie strolled here and added an extra element to the ritual. It was all about seeing and being seen. Soon after, the destination of this walking became the Place de l'Étoile, which was planted with extravagant gardens of the time. The effects of this Italian fashion still trace green lines around the city, even today. When the revolution came, the people also demanded their right to stroll. A garden for every Parisian. That's democracy. And so, Napoleon III planted 40,000 trees. He created the Bois de Boulogne. A park with artificial streams, waterfalls and lakes. They introduced ornamental birds, more realistic. First came the English swan, the mallard, and the peacock. People would come to the park to see them. The promenade became a pleasant incursion into a sanitized natural world. On Sunday, it was the place to be. In Paris, nature became fashionable. But this new wood, free from predators, began to attract others. Wild birds were also tempted to try their luck here. Soon after the Bois de Boulogne, 3 other natural spaces were created for the people of Paris. Butte-Chaumont in the north, Parc Montsouris in the south, and the Bois de Vincennes in the east. It is here that a surprise awaits us. A fabled animal of the countryside has managed to sneak into the city. When the humans are back at home, the remarkable life of the fox begins. Today there are around 100 of them. This vixen gave birth a few weeks ago. Her 2 cubs fathered by a fox she met at a train station. But the good-for-nothing had no desire for family life, so now Vixen has become a single mother. She is perfectly adapted to city life. She knows to enter Paris at twilight and leave at dawn with her provisions. Through disused tunnels, she has access to the entire city. Her cubs have never left the den. This is their world, inhabited by our leftovers. One of them was born with a handicap. One of his eyes is not capable of distinguishing shapes. His brother always discovers things first. If they'd been born in the country, they'd already be outside and independent. But That's one of the costs of living in this city. The children live at home much longer. Every night, Vixen goes out to hunt, but she's getting fed up. Her two overgrown adolescents are never satisfied. It's too much work for a single mother. The few morsels lying around the den always go the same way. Little cub never gets his share. Waiting for his mother in the hope of a good meal. In their den, little cub and his brother are safe. In a few days, they will have to leave and confront a world full of danger. Soon, little cub's life will be turned upside down. Foxes are new to Paris. To get here from the countryside, they have had to cross miles of built-up land through traffic without being seen. But to make your den in the middle of the city, that takes some nerve. And we still don't know how they do it. Birds came to Paris through the sky. Foxes cross suburbs and follow roads, but some have found another way in. Here's an unexpected route into the city, the Canal Saint-Martin. In the northeast of Paris, it's the work of the other Napoleon, Bonaparte. The polluted waters of the Seine were the cause of numerous epidemics. Paris needed a new source of drinking water. The water from another river, the York, was diverted into the city. That was 200 years ago, but today Mr. and Mrs. Courtship aren't bothered about that. The only thing on their minds is finding a nice place to live in the capital. For quite a while now, their life in the countryside has been fraught with danger. They are trapped, poisoned, and shot at. It's pretty clear. Country people have had enough of them. But Mrs. Courtship thinks their reasons are false. They're accused of digging burrows that collapse roads. But what about the roads? Don't they collapse their burrows? Ultimately, it's why they decided to move to the city, where no one wants to harm them. First, they need to find a suitable spot with a riverside view. This is it, the perfect spot. Mrs. Courtship likes the site, and these clovers are Mr. Courtship's favorites. This will do nicely. Very nicely indeed. Now they're digging. Actually, it's not so safe. Better look elsewhere. Only in Paris could you enjoy freedom like this, going into the canal in broad daylight without being shot at. Mrs. Courtship is thrilled, and Mr. Courtship reassured. But the city has its secrets. The ancestors of this couple were imported from America in the 19th century for their warm and inexpensive fur. They escaped from the farms and discovered our canals. But city life is another thing altogether. A tree. They know what that is. At least they can spend the night here in peace. In peace, well, not quite. The din of human life never stops. Is the safety of the city worth more than the quiet of the country? Amazingly, more and more species seem to think so. The migration of animals from the countryside is linked to a much broader movement. 20 years ago, our perception of nature changed. We started to understand that all living things are connected. Insects, plants, mammals. They all need each other. Perhaps we do too. Enough of the artificial gardens full of pesticides. We need truly natural spaces with real ecosystems bursting with life. In 2006, pesticides were banned in the parks and gardens. The effect was immediate, and very soon after thousands of insects returned. And guess who loves insects? Birds. Today there are 150 species of them. This invasion has made Mr. Swan not a happy man. He was here first, so he sees himself as the lord of the manor. He terrorizes everyone, on principle, even if they haven't done anything. Our geese have been awake since dawn, but it's still too early to fly. They wait for the rays of sunlight to create thermal drafts to carry them up. They straighten their feathers and they stay close together. Little Bar is anxious. That goose over there looks so familiar. The father gives the signal to leave. She must go. She must follow her family. Off to their holidays in the south. But first, a perilous task, crossing the great city. Nothing here resembles their world. High walls, people moving everywhere. Their only landmark is the river. Follow the Seine, don't lose track. The father holds their course at the front and creates a slipstream for the others. The mother is at the rear. She keeps the group together. A little bar is trailing behind. Press on. They haven't realized. A change of heart. The urge is too strong. She has to go back to where she's from. The family hasn't seen her go. They want to get out of the city as quickly as possible. Little boys searching for her look-alike. She has a GPS in her head. She instantly memorizes her route, photographs all the landmarks that appear, the quays, boulevards, and even the monuments. She's able to navigate as if reading a map. Bois de Boulogne? No problem. Her look-alike isn't here. Little Bar is a juvenile of only 6 months, alone, in the big city. How will she feed herself? Where will she sleep? Geese are social animals. They aren't built for solitude. They need others too much. Waters of the Atlantic fall on the city. Nature reminds us she's there, but all that live here have shelter. Another reason they're here. Life is more comfortable in the city. Attract animals not just because they feel safer. In some cases, they are also drawn to the shape of monuments. The lighting rod of the city. A shield to stop the sky from falling on our heads. At the beginning of the 20th century, the tower rose from the ground and became the tallest structure ever built by man. But in the beginning, all Paris was in uproar about the construction of this steel monster, visible from every part of the city. Useless and tasteless, it disfigured Paris. It was supposed to be demolished, but gradually the Iron Lady began to seduce Parisians. Her iconic shape drew the gaze of the rest of the world, like an enchanting lighthouse. Her steel body has borne so much rain, so much wind, so much laughter and love, storms and dramas. We can't talk about her without mentioning him. He's come back to the city and chosen her as his ally. He is the Emperor of Paris, the peregrine falcon. Nothing escapes his gaze. He sees everything. close to the roofs. This space is too enclosed. Peregrine is a superbird with extraordinary powers. His eye is a technological marvel, 10 times more powerful than our own. Always on the lookout, he notices the slightest movement. He's waiting for the ideal target. Other peregrines have chosen Paris as their hunting ground. This young female is also on the hunt, but for other reasons. Her prey is this young male. What is he capable of? That's what he's waiting for. Several targets approaching. The squadron follows the Seine. His favorite spot to attack. Perfect visibility. 100 kilometers an hour. Now he speeds up. 150 kilometers an hour. Ready to dive. 200 kilometers an hour. 250. Velocity 350 kilometers per hour. In the natural world, Peregrine lives on high cliff tops from where he dives into the abyss. His speed is his main weapon. It allows him to overcome prey larger than himself. He's the fastest bird on the planet. The lady has seen everything. She knows that he will be capable of providing for her young. But before the courtship can begin, falcons engage in the most enchanting rituals. It's a dance, a ballet, where they execute the most audacious movements. Generosity. He lets go of his prey and offers it to his beloved. An offering of love. Increasingly, birds of prey are coming to Paris for the monuments. Kestrels, sparrowhawks, and owls. Some are even making their nests in tall skyscrapers. The Champ de Mars. This ancient battlefield was for a long time a field of potatoes. Today it is planted with Turkish hazel, Indian lilac, and Osage orange. You might think that the Parisian fauna is completely French. Not at all. In fact, many of the city's species have been imported over the years from far-off countries. One of the best-kept secrets of Paris's wild world. This is one of the most surprising of all our stories. It begins in one of Paris's most historic neighborhoods, Montmartre. To understand it, we must go back to the 19th century. To produce natural silk, a strange insect was imported from Japan, the Ailanthus silk moth. But after the invention of synthetic silk, the caterpillar nurseries were abandoned. Today, these moths have almost entirely disappeared from France. The only place they have survived is in Paris. This is the Jardin de Saint-Vincent in the heart of Montmartre, where the ailanthus, the tree that sustains the silk moth caterpillar, grows in abundance. The moth breaks out of its silk cocoon. A dangerous operation. In a few hours, it unfurls its wings and dries them in the sunlight. It's a female and she has enough reserves for the rest of her life, several weeks. In any case, she doesn't have a mouth. She is programmed to reproduce. She only has a few days to manage it, but she has one big problem. How does she find a male in this vast metropolis? She has devised her own unique plan to find a mate, stay on her leaf and make sure that her suitor finds her. She sends chemical messages, pheromones. Thousands of volatile hormones disperse into the evening air. They are on the hunt through Paris. Seven kilometers away from Montmartre, in Parc Montsouris, a male has just hatched. More powerful than any man-made radar, his antennae are ultra-sensitive to the faintest scent. There, a single particle is enough to sound the alarm. The signal is crystal clear. A beautiful girl calls him from somewhere in the city. Love is in the air. But where could she be? The suitor needs another message to work out his route. Apart from the smell of Parisian diners, he can't smell anything. He flies up over the roofs, flying in wide curves to increase his chances of crossing paths with just one of the lady's pheromones. He has lost a scent and now navigates by sight. To get his bearings, he heads in the direction of the moon. But sometimes the moon isn't the moon. So unfortunately, many of them drop dead from fatigue underneath our street lights. Silk moth is doomed. He can only see the moon in front of him. But fate has chosen a different path. He's used most of his energy. Fatigue is setting in. Silk moth carries in his head a star map of the cosmos that guides him. But the lights of the city act like unknown stars and confuse his itinerary. There, he senses something. In the city, millions of particles of chemicals float around. Most of them don't fool our moth, but some are very similar to those of his sweetheart. Sometimes our own perfumes imitate those of nature. But on closer inspection, silk moth can tell the difference. There it is. He's found a scent. More of her pheromones. Now he can follow them. She's close. After so many trials, he has completed his nighttime marathon. Mating lasts several hours, the culmination of the life of the male. His last energy is spent inseminating his mate. His mission is complete. Silk moth falls to the ground, dead from exhaustion. The female's mission is accomplished. Her love potion is irresistible. Now she can plant her eggs on the leaves of the ailanthus. And so this Japanese moth continues to live under the Parisian sky. Little bar is also an Asian import, but bar-headed geese in Paris are few and far between. On the other hand, one can always find company, even if it's unwanted. For the last few hours, a rather strange gentleman has shown quite an interest. What exactly does he want? He doesn't seem to understand the situation. This little gentleman is a mallard, not a goose. In Paris, sometimes the natural order is slightly modified. You have to mix with some pretty unusual types. Canadians. In recent years, some have decided to make Paris their permanent home. It would be nice to have some friends around here. Will they accept her? That's how you get rid of him. These Canadians must be real Parisians. Eating, sleeping, getting around will be so much easier. They know where to be in any season. It's the start of a new life. And for getting around, the Seine is always the best choice. The Seine is nature's highway. Crossing the city in 2 minutes. Most Parisians can only dream of that. For 2,000 years, Paris has attracted people and animals from the rest of the world, but there are still hardy natives all around. Crows are original Parisians, constantly on the lookout for anything edible. They are known as pests, but they clear Paris of a third of its waste. And when they're finished, they gather in the calmest place in the capital, the cemetery of Père Lachaise. Today, this hill that was once covered in vines, vegetables, and wheat is the largest natural space in the city center. And all these animals aren't wrong. It's very peaceful here. The crow rules this domain, but cannot stand intrusions by its sworn enemy, the fox. Vixen hunts in complete silence. Very dangerous if you're not careful. Missed. It's safe up here. Vixen doesn't know how to climb. Tonight, she'll return home empty-handed. It's time for her two greedy boys to learn to feed themselves. Time for the big outing. Heading into the unknown, little cub hesitates. Is it because of his handicap? First, they must cross a few paths on the way to the main roads. But little cub can't see the obstacles. Does his mother know? The petite ceinture and then the big city. Thousands, millions of rodents await. A feast. A misjudgment, an accident, and little cub is separated from his family. He hasn't realized how bad the situation is. Right now, little cub is starving. He may not see well, but his nose certainly works. Here's a tasty snack. Too complicated. Where is it, Dan? Paris is waking up. What are those strange noises? Keep going. This seems like a safer place, with a tantalizing smell of chocolate. wolves are afraid of Vixen, but not a little fox cub. Now they are in charge. Starving, scared, and completely alone, little cub is at the end of his rope. He has to wait for nightfall. Many of Paris's foxes die before they reach their first birthday. And even if they pass that milestone, their average life expectancy is 3 years. In spite of this, foxes are growing in number in Paris, and thanks to the Petite Ceinture, a disused railway line that connects nearly all the parks and gardens of the capital, they have spread throughout the city. For him, just like for the other animals, one day the only food around will be in the trash. Winter arrives suddenly. Most of the settled birds are used to the cold. But for little Bar and her 2 Canadian friends, it's another story. Under its webbed feet, nothing is right. The plants she normally eats have become inaccessible. Their ancestors learned to abandon the winter and migrate to the south. Luckily, there are kindly Parisians to make sure they're fed. When the temperature drops below 0, many species also come to the capital to warm up. It's always 4 or 5 degrees warmer here than in the countryside. Especially the black-headed gulls. They come from the Atlantic in their thousands. The problem is they're much lighter. They snap everything up quickly. Even Mr. Swan is keeping a low profile. The heavier birds are at disadvantage. Little Bar is also too heavy. Better to get back to the grand old river. It never freezes. The Seine, a ribbon of life of a surprising richness. She enclosed the ancient town of Lutetia in her watery arms. And that time the water was incredibly pure, a limitless drinking supply. Then the town grew and she suffered. 50 years ago, only 3 species of fish could survive the levels of pollution. Today, thanks to the determined efforts, there are over 40. The Seine is in better health. Even the salmon are coming back. So much healthier, in fact, that some foreign fish have now made it their home. One of the most recent arrivals, an underwater giant, the world's catfish. Propelled by 7 fins, equipped with advanced motion sensors, this predator of over 2.5 meters in length prowls the depths of the river, looking for prey. It can locate any living creatures within 20 meters. It came from Hungary via the Danube and colonized the Seine. The Hungarian hunts anything that moves, roaches, frogs, and even pike. An ultra-precise radar with huge jaws. Occasionally, these solitary giants have impromptu gatherings. Individuals of more than 100 kilos each, 22 tons of catfish in a few square meters. What are they plotting? They are exchanging information, but what that is, no one knows exactly. And then they disperse. Recently, the world's catfish has developed a new hunting technique. It attacks the prey that least expect it. It smells fresh meat nearby. They are completely unaware of the danger lurking below. Voracious and is even capable of eating his own. But don't worry, if you want to swim in the Seine, he has never attacked a human, yet. A river, streams, woods and gardens, the city is on the right track. Whether you are a fish from Hungary, a Japanese moth, Chinese or Canadian geese, there is nothing quite like springtime in Paris. The sunny days warm hearts, and the city of light becomes the city of love. Naturally, spring is the time for procreation, but first must come the important ritual. Wooing, flirting, seducing, courting. Now is the time for romance. The champion of the courtship ritual is the great crested grebe. They test their charm, synchronize their movements in harmony. You might think that the birds are unable to sing their love songs over the din of the city, but no. We now know that they just increase the volume to make themselves heard. They sing louder than the birds in the countryside. In the gardens of the Tuileries, little migratory birds from Africa come to nest under the arches of the Carrousel. Swallows. They chose this site for its fabulous architecture. Our buildings are too smooth. The intricate decoration is perfect for building a nest. This site is also one of the most fiery in France. In the past, hunters led from here to hunt wolves, in French le loup, hence the name, the loup. Of that time, not only remains the beauty of monuments, but also an animal, and it deserves more than its lowly reputation, the pigeon. In the past, they lived in people's homes. Every house had its own coop. These companions served as either messengers or meals. There was always a pigeon to eat at home. After the First World War, people stopped training them and they were thrown out onto the streets. But these pigeons prefer to stay near us. Their descendants populate Paris today, but less well housed than before. Abandoned, they nest where they can, under bridges and under gutters. They shiver through the winter and are cursed all year round. All that just to stay near us. But when the season of love arrives, the 80,000 pigeons of Paris forget their troubles and begin to coo. There are several different species of pigeon. The wood pigeon, with his white collar, is a gentleman recently arrived from the countryside. He thrives in the urban environment, but prefers to live in trees. The other is the feral pigeon, with his orange eyes. This long-time Parisian has an incredible memory for people and places. The love stories of these pigeons are rather surprising indeed. Mr. Wood Pigeon is an old-fashioned romantic. Every spring he makes a point of seducing his beloved once again. These two have been together for years, but this old couple aren't slipping into a routine. Mr. Wood Pigeon begins with his most beautiful song. The female seems impressed, as if it is the first time. Who is this charming gentleman? Then he gets to work renovating the nest. Well, he pretends to. There, a new couple once again. Isn't it lovely to act out the first moments of a new love once more? It strengthens bonds and reignites their desire. They will stay together their entire lives. The feral pigeon, it must be said, is less naturally gifted. Though he does have a respectable lady pigeon, Mr. Pigeon is an unashamed womanizer. And this morning, a young female has caught his eye. A graceful young pigeon, if a little superior. A little rendezvous with her sounds very nice indeed. But our pigeon isn't quite a Casanova, he thinks. He's too hasty in his work. She's playing hard to get. She's not interested, in fact. He strutted, puffed out his neck. She's unmoved. She's seen enough. A real loser. Is he going to leave her alone? Mr. Pigeon's movements have attracted the attention of another female, and she's far more dangerous. Adultery is commonplace among feral pigeons. Wood pigeons wouldn't dream of it. By the end of spring, all the couples have been formed, and their offspring is on its way. But Little Bar hasn't found another of her species. Migratory birds have been known to form mixed couples with other species, and that could have happened had an unusual event not taken place. A flight of Canadians. Then a second. It seems like the whole country has come over. It's no accident the geese have recently changed their habits. These days, they come to Paris to breed. Little Bar thought she might have some new friends, but reality soon kicked in. They don't want her around. Alone again. There's always the gang of mallards, but they're total sex maniacs. When the mood takes them, the whole group of them harass a young female. An unpleasant moment for the young duck, but she knows they'll wear themselves out. Fortunately, the mistress of the lake, Mrs. Duck, learned how to protect herself. She has taken 2 lovers. The advantage of having 2 lovers is that each is jealous of the other. They never leave her side. Her bodyguards. Clever duck. Little Bar was born in captivity, but she escaped. She followed a Swedish family who ended up adopting her. A year ago, she found herself alone in the big city. She had made friends, good friends from Canada. She has adapted to the city, but still has no family. Today the city has woken without a breath of wind, and soon it will suffocate in the heat. Everyone is trying to get cool, looking for a shady spot. You have to know where to look. In the past, there were no trees in the city. The heat was so stifling that the decision was made to plant them. Osman came up with a solution For the trees to survive, he surrounded the base of their trunks with grills to protect their roots. Plane trees, lime trees, haws, chestnuts, they all provide us with shade, coolness, and oxygen. To Paris's 500,000 trees, nature has returned to the capital. By building up the city, people wanted to distance themselves from nature. But it became uninhabitable. And so, for their well-being, they began to reintroduce natural elements. Without intending, they opened the door to the world they had chased away. Weeds managed to force their way between paving slabs and tarmac for their place in the sun. The animals returned by sky, water, and land, a natural movement that started without our help. There's a new fashion in town. Suddenly, Parisians want their own small natural spaces, a balcony, terrace, or just a pot. Today, Paris's citizens plant, water, and care for their flowers. Without realizing, they are contributing to the natural renaissance. This human activity has had a very unexpected consequence. Animals have found out about this and have come to live in the city in their thousands. Such is the case for the bees. They are leaving the countryside and coming to live in Paris. Hundreds of swarms arrive each year. The swarm is guided by its queen. 15,000 loyal subjects follow her wherever she goes. In the countryside, flowers have disappeared from agricultural land. But Paris is a different story. There is pollen everywhere and of every sort. In parks, on balconies, or on terraces, enough to make your head spin. Paris has become the bees' Eldorado. The queen must find a nice spot up high to found her colony. There must be flowers nearby so her workers won't get too tired. When a wild swarm is discovered too close to humans, the expert is quickly called in, the beekeeper of Paris. These are European dark bees, a species that has lived in these lands for millions of years. They are rural, but very productive and very gentle. But they are threatened by new species imported from New Zealand. To encourage the growth of the dark bees, a rather unusual plan was hatched: to install hives in all available spaces on the roofs of monuments, museums, and hotels. Today, the beekeeper takes care of more than 60 hives that he has set up on Parisian rooftops. The time has come for the queen and her swarm to stop wondering The beekeeper has a plan of his own. First, he calms the queen and stops her moving around. He places her in a quiet spot. Then he steals parts of her colony and takes them away. Phase 2 of his plan. Settle the captive group of bees next to another hive, by the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And then a natural wonder. The captives quickly realize that they have lost their queen and immediately begin conceiving a new one. There, a new queen. Now to introduce her to some males. The queen mates only once in her entire life. In a few minutes, she receives millions of sperm cells from the males. Then, Her Majesty enters the hive, never to leave again. A queen can give birth to 2,000 bees a day. By the end of her life, she will have brought 2 million bees into the world. The captive bees are relieved. Balance is restored to the world. They can now explore their surroundings and hunt for flowers. Quick, pollen. We know that today the bees of Paris are in better health than the bees in the fields. Pesticides have been banned in the city. Oddly enough for the bees, the city is less polluted. And their honey? Well, honey from Paris contains an exquisite mix of aromas from all over the world. Orange blossom, lemon, chestnut, lime, and all the many colorful flowers grown on balconies. Today, young queens born in the city are sent to revive the countryside with their youthful vitality. Mr. and Mrs. Koipu still haven't found their new home. She's pregnant, and he needs to find stable lodging soon. They've just about had enough of the homeless life. Normally, Koipus live in harems, 3 to 5 females to 1 male. But this female has other ideas. Here's a burrow, already dug. Lots of space, a few tunnels with direct underwater access. It's perfect. Rats! Oh no, not them. A lot of people think that koipus are related to rats, but that isn't true. They have absolutely nothing to do with that awful animal. Koipus are related to the beaver, and they don't share their burrows with rats. For that reason, they've now gone 2 days without sleep. Mrs. Koipu is exhausted. It's nothing fancy, but at least it's quiet. Often, when you've given up all hope, that's when you find your answers. An island sheltered from the outside world. An abundant food supply, a stunning view, it's heaven. Can you guess where? That's right. If you happen to be passing by, do stop and say hi. Just don't mention moving house. The city provides many species with a place to stay. But amazingly, some animals come here to undertake the most perilous task of their lives. Mrs. Duck has given her 2 lovers the slip. She's found a secluded spot to hatch her chicks. But now they will have to jump. An 8-meter drop and they don't know how to fly. They are only a few hours old and yet incredibly bold. How have they learned so much so quickly? But there's always one more fearful than the rest. Such brave ducklings. A year ago, little Bar had to leave the nest too. Like this little grebe, she too lived in the comfort of her mother's feathers. Her father went out for food, but it was her mother that put it in her beak. She also had an older sister. There was always a bit of jealousy, but it all worked out. It was a long time ago, but little Bar can never forget. A new flight landed this morning. A Swedish family. Little Bar recognizes their voices. It's her adopted family. They're making their annual stopover. They come from Sweden and are heading south. A year's gone by. Now little Bar can leave. Mr. Swan will be happy. Goodbye, Canadian friends. Migratory birds have crossed our lands for countless centuries. Their presence is a sign that the cities are changing. But where is it all heading to? What will our cities look like in the future? We know that contact with nature improves our health and our quality of life. It changes everything. Today we welcome back creatures we chased away in the past. We are trying to persuade them to come back and live among us. Creatures of the sky and of the grass. The river dwellers and flower lovers. They all agree They have begun to join us in the modern world. But can we do better? Can we imagine a green city with a peaceful natural world at its door? A great cityscape where all the natural spaces are connected to each other. Pathways that allow all living creatures to travel freely between the town and the country. Could we hope that some of the most timid inhabitants of our forests should come to feed in our parks, romance beneath our windows, walk in our squares? Could we breathe an air that is free from fumes? The city planners are working on it. In several large cities, the movement has already begun. Montreal, Brussels, more human, more connected to the living world. The race for the city of the future is on. Let's continue our dream. Let's imagine and invent so that our children too can call Paris the city of light.